Video Letter to Joan, page 3. In my first two videos, I tried to cover some of the major points of my childhood so that you would understand why my perception of near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences are a little bit different than other people who have had them. I was coming from a different mindset when these things began to happen to me. Before I continue, I've had many questions. I will do a questions and answer at the end. Some of the questions I've been asked about the first two videos will answer themselves. But one question I got, I will answer because it does make a difference. When I tell you that I was moved from public schools to private schools, these were academic institutions. They were not religious based whatsoever. In the early 70s, a lot of schools were popping up all over the South, especially Mississippi, because of segregation. So these were small schools. They were academically based. Most of them did not have a lot of students, enough for even sports programs. And religion was not taught. It was complete academics. And I'll leave that there. When my mother decided to move us to the city, my dad had went to work overseas and she could live where she wanted. And she had several sisters that lived in a particular city on the Gulf Coast. And that's where she decided to take us and decided to reintroduce us into public schools. But we were in another state. And I actually enjoyed my first few months there. I was meeting new people, meeting parts of my family, extended family that I had never gotten to meet. I never knew a lot of these people. I'd heard stories about them, but we were invited to go to a swimming party. And growing up on the farm, I'd never been in water any deeper than my waist, wading up and down creeks. So as I was walking by the deep end of the pool, not knowing how to swim, I'm 10 years old now, I'm pushed in, fully clothed. And one of my cousins just reached out and pushed me into the water, and I went straight to the bottom. Well, immediately my soul came out of my body. Immediately, before it was even completely immersed. As I was going over, I was angry as I was being pushed in and realized I'm fixing to hit the water fully dressed here. I'm angry and I screamed. So when I hit the water, there was no air in my lungs, and I immediately took on a bunch of water, and my soul jumped right out of my body. It hovered over the body more at the top of the pool, while my body sank to the bottom of a 6-foot pool, and I sat there and watched it happen. The body was struggling for its life. I had no empathy for it whatsoever. To me, it was merely like taking off dirty clothes. I finally had gotten what I wanted, which was free from the existence of being trapped in the body. But some new things had occurred that I did not have before. As I explained in my first video of where we come from, and I will elaborate that more at the end of this series, we didn't have bodies. We were sheer energy, pure light, just pure energy, pure thought, just a pure thought in the mind of God. This is what we are. It started becoming more clear to me what's really going on here after this event, because I have a body in front of me. I'm sitting here watching my body drown, and at the same time I stuck my hands out in front of me and touched them together, and I was just as much a person without the body as I was a person with the body. My hands were identical. I have very unique features on my hands that can be identified as me. And I put them out in front of me and I could see, yep, this is me. And I touched them and they were just as real. I became very fascinated that I could breathe underwater with this body. And I began moving my hand through the water, and it was not wet. I could feel the density of the water, but I felt no wet. I had the ability to hear what the conversation was poolside as to whether or not somebody should go in and get her. No, give her a minute and let her figure it out on her own. I even knew their thoughts. There was nothing I couldn't access. Information flowed. A lot of my questions that I had were being answered very rapidly. As fast as you can think of it is as fast as the answers are revealed to you. The body seems to be a great hindrance for communication. It's like it's like putting on a coffin. It's like crawling in a grave. It's death incarnate. Literally, it's walking death to me. And while the Bible tells us that Adam was made of dirt, this flesh is made of dirt, well, I get it. But to be out of the body, oh, I was ecstatic. Finally, this great burden that I had bared was gone. And I couldn't have been more thankful. About this time, the same person who pushed me in dove in and grabbed the body. It's struggling for its life. I could care less about it. It seemed to have a consciousness of its own. I found that quite fascinating, that there's a difference between the soul consciousness and the flesh consciousness. I was quite aware that with the body struggling for its life the way it was, it had a desire to live. It had an animal instinct, whatever you want to call it. I had no memory of what the body went through. When she went in and grabbed the body and took it to the top of the water, my soul immediately jumped back into the body. And I was angry about that. Oh, I was very upset. I'm having to process this information very fast because as soon as I was back in the body, I was aware that it too was angry about being pushed in. I'm immediately having to meld these two back together and process all this information. I didn't want to be back in the body. The body was mad about being pushed in. Its adrenaline was pumping. I didn't have this adrenaline. And so I'm having to process all of that. And I didn't know how to do it. There's nobody around me that I can talk to about these things. I've been shut down in my childhood. I'm not allowed to speak of them. So I'm having to deal with this all on my own. I went through several days of really not knowing how to respond to it, other than I was very fascinated that we have another body that apparently, from my understanding, when the light comes into this body, that the body begins to grow, the light inside of us also does, or should. Let me put it that way. Not everybody's grows. So as this is happening, it apparently mimics I don't know if the light is mimicking the body or the body is mimicking the light. I haven't decided which way that goes yet. I'm assuming genetics have priority here, so the light is mimicking the body, but that's total assumption. I really don't know on that one. But I do know that when you are out of your body and you have manifested your light body, when it's grown to its fullest, maybe puberty, somewhere in this area this occurs, I'm not sure. This was my first real experience of being out of the body, a near-death experience. Um, I was quite fascinated with that, and I spent a lot of time pondering on these two separate bodies, that they are identical. And it also reminded me of the one in the Gap, when this other one appeared that looked like him. They were identical, but completely different. And I felt that way about the difference between what I'm going to call my light body, my soul, and my flesh body. They're two completely different entities. They have completely different agendas. The body, I call it just a meat bag, really. I know that's a disgusting way to look at it, but that's how I feel about it. It's hungry, it's thirsty, it hurts, it wants to sleep, it wants to eat, it wants its way all the time. We have to cater to it and take care of it and clean it and take it to the doctor and all of these other things, and it's quite a burden because your light body doesn't require any of these things. You don't have to have oxygen. You don't have to have water. You don't have to have food. You don't have to have any of this. It is completely contained within itself. The only thing that I can understand the light body requires is consciousness and love. And when you are out of the body and you're able to ask a lot of these questions, you actually just think them, and as fast as you can think them, the answers are coming. And I did get an answer to a question about are all people like this? Do all manifest these light bodies? Does everybody get one? And the information was given to me that as human bodies are distorted, souls also can be. That just because a human body would look perfect, a light body can be deformed. I'm going to use that word. It has a black, dark essence connotation to it. No light, very little light, more of shadow. So no, not everybody can completely manifest a perfect light body. It's something that must be worked on. I don't know if it's worked on, how you achieve this. I haven't gotten the answers to those yet, why some do and some don't. But I think it has to do with the nature of the soul. Whether it's a good soul, bad soul, dark soul, light soul. But that was my perception of being thrown in the swimming pool. And the first experience of having my soul ripped out of the body. I really didn't want to go back in, but it happened anyway, and it's going to happen several more times in the next 2 years, between the ages of 10 and 12. And this one was really an eye-opener for me and prepared me for the next few. I was more ready. I wasn't as shocked. I knew what was going down when it went down. So as I reveal them to you, a lot more information is going to start coming out that I was not able to reveal to you before. You needed to understand that I remembered before I was born, and that I'm quite aware of all these. Everything around us is living. Everything around us has a spirit. We manifest many of them within ourselves. We're like these big receivers for all these spirits. And for example, spirit of anger, spirit of love, spirit of hate. These are different types of spirits, just like the animals have their own. and I'll continue my experiences